and policies values.
Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. The European Commission has announced an agreement with China's Commerce Ministry to resume next period chip exports after Beijing agreed to waive licensing requirements for semiconductors declared for civilian use. EU Trade Chief Maros Sefcovic has said that the deal will help restore supply chains disrupted since October this year. Chinese President Xi Jinping is on an inspections trip around China. While on tour, he has urged Guangdong province to deepen technological infrastructure and legal cooperation with Hong Kong and Macau to advance the Greater Bay Area integration plan. Taiwan's Vice President Hsiao Bi-khim has declared that Taiwan is not alone after returning from a landmark Europe trip where she attended the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China summit in Brussels. Her visit, praised by Taiwan's former president, while China's mission to the EU has called it a serious interference in Beijing's internal affairs. Germany will establish a 12-member expert committee to reassess trade relations with China, focusing on energy, raw materials, and investment security following growing economic tensions between the two giant economies, and Chancellor Merz, the coalition backs this motion. The Philippines has now evacuated over 100,000 people as Super Typhoon Uwan, also known as Fang Wong, heads towards Luzon with torrential rains and destructive winds. Authorities have raised signal number 5 in Catanduanes and parts of Camarines as the storm threatens to make landfall in Orola province. South Korean rescuers have recovered a third body after the collapse of a decommissioned power plant structure in Ulsan. With 4 workers still trapped under the rubble, authorities are using heat sensors, search dogs, as well as remote scopes to locate the missing personnel. But operations remain dangerous due to the risk of further collapse. China has suspended its ban on exports of gallium, germanium, and antimony and super-hard materials to the U.S. effective until November 27, 2026. According to the Commerce Ministry, the move temporarily lifts restrictions imposed in December 2024 on these critical dual-use materials vital to tech, high-tech, and defense industries. Israeli military has confirmed that 1 Palestinian person has been killed by Israeli shelling on Saturday. This comes as U.S. confirms that discussions on aid continues with Israel as U.S.-brokered fragile ceasefire holds on. Now we start with China. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for comprehensively deepening reform and opening up for high-quality development and advancing the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area with sustained efforts. She has also hailed the southern province as a pace-setter, pioneer, and pilot zone of reform and opening up. While visiting the Yijiang Memorial Park in Meizhou City, Xi Jinping has noted that all of China's great achievements today are built on the foundation laid by Mao Zedong and other older generation revolutionaries. President Xi has also stressed the importance of carrying forward revolutionary traditions and boosting farmers' incomes through all-around rural revitalization, while also calling for efforts to educate and guide officials and the public, especially the young people. The Memorial Park of Meizhou City honors Yi Jiaying, the late Chinese Communist Revolutionary leader and former chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress and one of the 10 marshals of the Republic of China, People's Republic of China. Now for this discussion, we welcome Colin Chong-Yu-Keat. He's a foreign affairs and security as well as strategy analyst, joins us live from University of Malaya from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Welcome to
Thank you, Suma.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor, can you tell us what is this long-term strategy and goal, also motive behind this China's developing and advancing of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau area?
Well, we have seen how a Guangdong tour is never random. It's a calculated move. And President Xi always uses Guangdong to send symbolic messages about the economic direction of the country. So by this tour, we can see that it's a way of Beijing admitting that the current growth model has been lacking. It's stuck now. So we have seen how the domestic economic downturn of China, property sector is on the downturn, and local governments are mired in debt. Consumption power is weak, and foreign firms are also hesitant to increase their investments in China. So we have seen how this is a message that is a reform call by Beijing and opening up. So to re-emphasize that reform is meant to calm markets and to signal that China won't retreat deeper. So it's less about ideological renewal, but it's more about economic damage control. So we've seen that it's all about this positive messaging narrative being sent by President Xi that we are still reforming, we still control the countryside areas, and to bridge the development gap between urban and rural development. And of course, we prioritize stability and reforms, and these are still very much in line with his push for economic reforms for the past decade. So I think this is the core message being sent by President Xi to domestic audience as well as to international audience.
And building on that, Professor, do you think China is shifting towards more state-led or market-driven development under the banner of high-quality development in these Bay areas?
Well, we have seen how we have seen some upheavals and shakeups in the internal political struggle in the party, and to emphasize rural revitalization is also tied to the notion of social stability to address the concerns of the youth, the younger demographic groups. And we have seen how the Tangping movement, the lie flat movement, so the younger people have now practically given up hopes for greater jobs and greater income levels. So youth unemployment still remains high, urban stress is rising, rural inequality remains severe. So these are all the core concerns of the fundamental economic gaps that President Xi is well aware of, and that by this tour, I think he's trying to achieve this two-pronged effort to reinforce his grip in the party, and also at the same time also to want to show that it still has the support and the care from the grassroots, especially from the rural areas and regions. So even if resources are limited, even with these ongoing domestic economic concerns, so these are the two-pronged objectives that Xi is trying to do here.
And Professor, building on your answer, this Xi's motive here, how does Beijing balance central control with regional autonomy in promoting this pioneering zones like Guangdong?
Well, we've seen how the importance of this decentralization move to ensure that the support and the influence of the party remains at the highest level in different regions, beyond and transcending the core regions of Beijing and Shanghai, and of course also to reinforce President Xi's grip and influence amidst these new domestic upheavals, and to ensure that his core message of reforms and to weed out corruptions and governance issues are being well accepted by even with in regions far away from the core nexus of the elite areas in Beijing. So of course also he wants to send a very strong message that all these regions are still very much in line with the party's long-term goals, as well as at the same time to ensure that the support remains high for him and his circles, from these regions, and to show that the ultimate outcome of these revitalization efforts in these areas will ultimately translate to the success of President Xi's own economic reforms, and finally, yes, it's bearing fruits now after years of his economic model. So this is the underlying message that President Xi wants to send, also to external investors, to external markets, to external powers, that the drive for reform still remains high, and that Beijing is still very much accepting this inflow, or this stimulus of foreign direct investments and foreign inflow of technologies and capital amidst this new downturn of declining purchasing power and declining consumption power. So it's trying to send this message that growth is still strong and reform is still underway. Also.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Collins, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, we stay in the region. The Chinese government has stated that it is waiting for concrete actions by the Netherlands to resolve a dispute over chip maker Nexperia that has led to shortages of the company's chips and threatened car production. Meanwhile, according to the European Commission, the Chinese authorities have confirmed a partial resumption of Nexperia's chips, easing a blockade that has alarmed car makers all over the world. The dispute erupted in September when the Dutch government effectively took control of the Nexperia, which is based in the Netherlands but whose parent company is China's Wingtech. The Netherlands intervened at Nexperia, which is a major maker of basic chips used in the electrical systems of the cars, saying that it had to do so to prevent the company from moving production from Europe to China. Meanwhile, China has responded by blocking exports of the company's finished products on October 4th, leading to shortages all around the world. Now we go back to discussing this with Professor Collins Chong-Kyu-Keat. He's in Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us.
Thank you.
Professor, looking at this, what do you think, how important is an integrated Nexperia is with China and also European market, and what does this Nexperia dispute, what did it reveal about the growing politicization of currently semiconductor industry?
Well, we're seeing now, of course, Beijing has got the jitters now, is growing and increasingly anxious about this move. And Nexperia is a Chinese-owned chip maker in Europe, and the Dutch government's decision to force divestment is hitting China hard. Of course, in China's confidence in these overseas tech technology assets. So this statement reflects a three-pronged calculation. First, to ensure that if the Dutch government continues this move, then other EU states might copy the similar move, which will jettison more Chinese acquisitions. And of course, this case is just happening just as China's own chip sector is struggling under US export controls and tariffs. So losing this Western foothold and presence in Europe will hurt Beijing's strategic positioning. And of course, also Beijing wants to soften the political tone, hoping that Netherlands will reconsider or at least allow for a smoother exit. But of course, all in all, China is trying to contain the political contagion in Europe. And of course, also China knows that continued suspension will risk that being looked as a retaliation, which will worsen tensions between both the Netherlands and EU. And by trying to signal greater cooperation on exports, Beijing hopes to portray itself as a responsible party and to keep its leverage. But of course, also it's all being this narrative to salvage whatever that's left. And the message being sent is that Beijing still wants technological cooperation, and it's not hoping for further escalations. It has already been hurt by US export controls, and now it doesn't want the same to happen to its assets in Europe. So the message being sent is that let's avoid a spiraling of this tit for tat move, and don't escalate us further. So what we can do is that we hope for a greater positive overtures from both sides, and we hope for stability in the market. So that's the whole move by Beijing in this regard, Asuma.
Yes, Professor, as you also mentioned that we hope for a stable market, but should countries have the right to intervene in foreign-owned companies operating within their borders? And how should governments balance national security concerns with the need to maintain stable global supply chains?
definitely is upon the ultimate rights and interests of the host nations to secure their own national interests and security first, their national sovereignty, and this has been the case for Netherlands. And of course, also he has to safeguard. The future, calculation of its own economic returns from this sector. And we have seen how in the past Netherlands has faced this dilemma of whether being aligned further with the US-led moves to isolate China back during the time of the Biden administration, and whether also to prioritize its own national interests, which will need the further capital and markets and technology from China. So we have seen how this has played out. I think the mood now is to join the bandwagon of what President Trump has started in terms of his brilliant move to to synergize the movement in terms of fallback options, with the move to isolate China further in terms of export control, in terms of tariff measures, but also in terms of agreements in technology, in critical minerals with the region in Indo-Pacific. So I think Netherlands now has seen that at least in the near short term, greater alignment with the US will, and of course with EU, will provide greater stability for its own national interests, seeing how Beijing's own technological capacity has suffered under the export controls banner. So of course Netherlands has full rights, and it has to remain in control of external influence-seeking activities, especially also on the presence of the Chinese technological capacity in Netherlands. So and it is now Netherlands is also trying to send a message that we have the capacity also to have our own leverage and fully support the rights of controls by Netherlands in this regard, and of course also to increase the momentum of the Western pressure on Beijing. So Netherlands plays a critical role in this, which I think the cards and chips should remain within the hands of Netherlands, Asuma.
Yes, right. With that, I would like to thank our Professor Paul Collins for joining us and sharing that insight throughout these topics. Thank you very much. Now we move on. Taiwan's Vice President Hsiao Bi-khim has returned from a landmark diplomatic breakthrough trip to Europe. After returning from the trip, Hsiao has said that Taiwan is not alone and has a lot of friends around the world. She has added that Taiwan will continue to show the world its resolve. Hsiao has also stated that Taiwan's international situation has been extremely difficult, but Taiwan has never backed down. Let's in fact listen into what the Taiwanese Vice President has said.
就是一直以来，台湾的国际处境都非常的困难，有很多的不公平，也有很多的挫折，没有一件事情是容易的。但是我们始终也没有退缩，因为我们相信台湾人民跟世界公民一样，都该有参与国际社会的机会，更因为有全体国人的努力与坚持，让我们在不曾停止的艰困与挑战当中，也要一步一步开创我们的道路。
Hsiao also spoke at the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China's annual summit held in the European Parliament in Brussels. While Taiwan foreign ministers on occasion visit Europe and other parts of the world that have no formal ties to Chinese-claimed Taipei, it is rare for an official as senior as the vice president to do so, given the risk of backlash from Beijing against the host nation. China refuses to speak to Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te and his administration and deems the president as a separatist. Now for this discussion, we welcome Venus Upadhyaya. She's a senior journalist, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Venus, looking at this now, what does Vice President Hsiao Bi-khim's visit to Europe signals about Taiwan's growing diplomatic engagement despite Beijing's opposition?
I think it's a very significant trip because this is not the first, annual conference of APEC, but this is the first time that as the Vice President of Taiwan, she has spoken at the European Parliament. So I think that is something very significant that itself loudly gives a message to the PRC. And I think the PRC would have certainly noticed that. Her speech also has many important points, where she if you have gone through her speech, you see that she describes Taiwan as a democracy under pressure. She talks about maintaining the rule-based order in the world. She talks about a common fight, against autocratic regimes. She talks about economic resilience. So there are many important things that she talks about, which is actually the shared concerns of all the democracies in the world today. So I think her trip is very significant, keeping in mind that she has spoken at the European Parliament. Meanwhile, I think we should also know that European Parliament is one of the largest investor in Taiwan. If you go through it, so it's not that the Taiwanese weren't having relationships with the countries in the European Parliament, but yes, there was always PRC pressure on the interaction between Taiwanese and rest of the world. But something certainly is drastically changing, and that is getting reflected. Maybe it is the fears of a 2027 invasions, that is making the world look at Taiwan in certainly a certain different way.
Right, and building on that, what risks or benefits does Europe face in welcoming, risking welcoming Taiwanese leaders in summits like these, and how might China's condemnation and view, in this case particularly, visit impact EU's China relations?
I think it's a very dynamic situation. So I think there is no linear narrative to it. If you look at all these interactions, so for that matter, this is not the first annual conference of, the IPAC. This is the third time where she mentions that last time they met in Taipei, and before that, for her, this is the third time. Last time they met in Taipei, before that they met in Washington, D.C. So I think the Taiwanese administration has been giving loud messages. And whereas if you look at PRC, the messages that are coming from PRC have also remained the same. So I do not think that the Chinese are differing from their point of view or their narrative on Taiwan, and the Taiwanese are obviously not differing from their persistent narrative about their sovereignty. But what is changing right now is the context in the Indo-Pacific. And so if you look at the messages that have come up, even if you look at Trump and Xi's recent meeting in South Korea, Trump says that, Taiwan was not discussed at all. That in itself is a very loud message. But if you look at, the US interaction with PRC, or if you look at the European Union's interaction with PRC, they also have met in Kuala Lumpur. So you see, these are very dynamic interactions where countries are now interacting for various kind of interest. And I think that Trump's trade and tariffs have made the entire situation very dynamic, where you have to kind of compete for specific interest. You have larger strategic interest and you have larger differences of opinions, but you also have certain converging interests. And in that context, I think there are messages where the European Union and US have said that we need, PRC's help to basically, put an end to the Ukraine war. But on the other end, I think the European Union has also given, and the US has also given a loud message that their stand on the issues of Taiwan remain the same.
Yes, with that, I would like to thank Venus Upadhyaya for joining us today and sharing that insight all the way from Taiwan. Now, moving on, according to reports, the Pakistani Chief of Naval Staff, Naveed Ashraf, has said that the first batch of Hangor-class conventionally powered attack submarines jointly built by China and Pakistan is expected to enter service in Pakistan's Navy next year. Ashraf has also stated that the submarine program is progressing smoothly. He has added that the program is notable for boosting Islamabad's submarine force capabilities and reflecting close Sino-Pakistani collaboration on naval equipment. Reports also suggest that this confirmation from Pakistan's top naval official suggests India's dominance of the Indian Ocean could be tested, and that if Beijing has overcome a major technical hurdle. Now, for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us again. Thank you. Now, looking at this, does China's deepening military collaboration with Pakistan, including submarine technology transfer, signal a broader strategy to counter India's influence in Indo-Pacific? What do you think is the motive of Pakistan upping such defense cooperation with China?
Well, firstly, Suma, always a pleasure to be on the NewsX world, right? Well, this information or this news does not come as a surprise, because the defense cooperation, or in fact the nexus between Pakistan and China, has grown over the years for last about more than 5 decades. And of late, you see that this nexus is getting further, deeper, especially from the strategic dimensions. Firstly, coming to the submarine per se, well, it has a operational connotation, because this deal was signed sometime in 2015 for 8 Hangor-class submarines, which Pakistan was to get from China. This is a joint project, and these submarines are definitely on a very high operational technological scale, because they have the air independent propulsion. That means that these submarines don't have to surface or snorkel up off and on, because they can remain submerged for almost 3 weeks. So therefore, this gives definitely added capability to Pakistan, and in that way it can exercise area access, area denial, and definitely pose challenge to India's domination in the Indian Ocean, especially the Western Indian Ocean, that is the Arabian Sea, and also up to the Gulf. Second point is we need to see the strategic dimension. Pakistan today is 80% equipment is from China, whether it is frigates, whether land system, all are from China. And China also has invested about $70 billion on the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Now, what are the Chinese designs? Well, I think the land dispute between India and China, while it continue, but Chinese focus now is on the Indo-Pacific, Indian Ocean region. And you see the string of bases the Chinese have made, right from Myanmar, there is Choi Pyu, they have a base Ream in Cambodia, then they also investing in Chittagong Airport, they have also got some facilities in Sri Lanka, Djibouti, and Gwadar, not to forget, is coming up as a major base. And only last week, China has launched a 3rd aircraft carrier, Fujian, and they already have Liaoning and Shantung 3 aircraft carriers. So what does it all indicate? It indicates that Chinese are going to step into Indian Ocean region in a big way, and they want to dominate the maritime sea routes, especially the energy routes, and also overcome the Malacca syndrome, that means the choke point in Malacca. So they like to have a good deal of assets placed in places like the bases in Gwadar or bases in Djibouti. So all I can say is that this has to be seen both in the operational and strategic dimension. Operationally, Pakistan Navy gets augmented capability, but when you see jointly, it is Pakistan-China nexus that will be actually overplaying in this region, especially when it comes to domination of Indian Ocean region or Indo-Pacific. Asuma.
Yes, building on your answer, Major General, as you mentioned that Pakistan relies heavily, you mentioned 80% on Chinese defense capabilities, and China also has invested heavily on Pakistan-China corridor, economic corridor, as well as the infrastructures you mentioned, such as Gwadar. So to what extent does Pakistan's increasing reliance on Chinese defense technology strengthen Beijing's strategic foothold? And also, what risks does Pakistan face in relying so heavily only on China?
Well, Pakistan as a state has always invested in its interest while compromising its strategic autonomy. They have been used by big powers like America, and now Chinese are using them. It's almost like a vassal state. Pakistan is in deep debt and they only bail them out by borrowing, and many times they are almost on the verge of defaulting for the IMF paybacks. So the point is that the Pakistanis quite know that when Chinese invest or the Chinese support comes at a cost, and the Chinese follow the debt trap diplomacy, and that way Pakistan is no exception. So Pakistan quite knows that whatever support they are getting from China, it has a cost to pay, and Pakistan almost is like a vassal state. They are not a partner, but they are actually, I think, the compliant state of China, and Chinese have got a full foothold in Pakistan, because not only economically as far as defense equipment is concerned, and also the Chinese have of late also stationed their security forces to protect their assets, especially there have been repeated attacks on the Chinese national along the China-Pakistan economic corridor, and China also in a big way exploiting the Pakistani mineral resources, especially when it comes to Balochistan and also in POK. The point I'm trying to make is that Pakistan quite knows that it has to pay a price by being a vassal state, which they are quite willing to do, because they have twofold strategic interest. One is to challenge India and come up as a proxy of China against India, and secondly they want to be a flag bearer of the Islamic world. So both the ends they are willing to go to any extent, may it be compromise of the strategic autonomy or fall into debt trap, but they will continue to pursue these two goals, and the price they will be paying is quite obvious, because Pakistan today is in dire state as far as economy is concerned. Its dependence on China is complete, and I think that they are almost a vassal or client state, and that reality they are willing to accept, Asuma.
Yes, with that I would like to thank Major General Gigi Dwivedi for always joining us and sharing that insight as a defense analyst from New Delhi. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the Philippines. Philippines has evacuated over 100,000 residents across its eastern and northern region as Typhoon Hangor intensifies into a super typhoon ahead of its expected arrival, threatening to unleash torrential rains, destructive winds, and storm surges. Storm alert signals have been hoisted across large parts of Philippines with signal number 5. This is the highest warning raised over the southeastern Luzon, including Catanduanes and coastal areas of Carmines, Norte, and Camarines Sur. While on the other hand, Metro Manila and surrounding areas are under signal number 3. According to reports, the super typhoon Hangor, which is locally known as Uwan, is set to make a landfall in the Orola province in central Luzon. Now moving on, in South Korea, rescue teams have recovered a third body from the rubble of the collapsed structure at a decommissioned power station in Ulsan. The collapse has occurred as workers were dismantling parts of the massive steel facility in preparation for demolition. Authorities say 4 workers remain trapped, with rescuers still unable to locate 2 of them. Emergency crews are using heat sensors, remote cameras, and search dogs to locate the missing workers. However, officials say rescue efforts are moving cautiously due to the high risk of another collapse. Though the fire department has not yet released an official statement, rescue operations are still continuing in the region. And that's a wrap on the China report. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.